Hello, gorgeous, and welcome to Astro Tea of what's happening celestially. So, let's get into this week in astrology. So, we got Venus entering Libra, and we got Pluto finally going direct in Aquarius. So, now that we're in mid October, it's looking a little crazy outside, but at least Venus in Libra can kind of bring a lot of beauty, balance. Pluto is bringing in that power and transformation. So let's break it down. So, first and foremost, we got Venus in Libra happening on October 13th through November 9th. And this is her home sign. This is one of her other babies. The other baby is Taurus. And so it feels very natural, very elegant, romantic, and very partnership focused. And also loves aesthetics and creativity really can flourish during this time. Definitely think fashion, music, art. You can also do different things to develop your own personal style. I highly recommend Pinterest. It's one of my favorite places to be. So definitely look on there to see what you can kind of do to change your aesthetic if that's what you're going for. And also, this is the time to put your own artwork out there. Just be creative. Don't be scared. Just allow it to do its own thing. And I guarantee that someone is actually waiting for your creative voice. But what I will say, Libra is also about communication, negotiation, and persuasion. So this could be a really good time if you wanted to like partner with someone. You could do like, I know there's a lot of artists who do like wholesale orders, that kind of thing. This would be the perfect time to negotiate those types of things. I think the biggest thing to watch out for with Libra energy in general is conflict avoidance or controlling the dynamic to create peace. I think I've noticed that a lot with some Libra placements. It's like something might bother them, but they won't say anything because it's like, oh my God, like I don't want to hurt their feelings or I don't want them to think bad of me. And it's like, no, you feel some type of way. You can have a healthy conversation and a healthy relationship, but it's really difficult to have like a realistic, healthy connection if you're just brushing issues under the rug. And conflict does not always equate to disaster. It can actually be very constructive. Libra is an air sign. It is literally all about communication. Let's put all of this information on the table, and then let's see what new thing can we do that could potentially make everyone very happy. And so that's definitely the vibe for sure. And then on a collective level, I think it does remind us not to lose ourselves in group thinking or over prioritizing other people. Like I said, I always recommend therapy. I think when it comes down to like people pleasing and stuff like that, like there's a deeper root to what that might tie into. You know what I mean? I think you kind of think about, as a child, you had to be as pleasant as possible, and that did not always equate to having a comfortable childhood, basically. Hopefully that made sense. But again, do not over prioritize others' needs over your own. And definitely balance is definitely the goal, but not to lead to self erasure. So definitely pay attention to that. Also, another historical tie-in, which is Art Nouveau, which is a very beautiful art period back in, when did Art Nouveau start? I want to say no, excuse me, 1890 to 1910. It was a very like international style, and a lot of the curves and forms were inspired by plants and flowers. So I could definitely see like elements of that coming back into the fold. But also, if you're interested, maybe this could be, if you've never heard of this art style, it could be very inspirational for you. So again, Pinterest. Definitely look into that. But it was just really beautiful. Like they did a lot of architecture, woodworking, a lot of, if you've ever seen those older like Tiffany stained glass lamps, that's very that. So definitely look into that. I think it's a good time over there. Very a lot of beautiful stuff. The other thing that is very similar to this Venus and Libra type of energy is the Treaty of Versailles, which was signed in 1919, and it was a very important treaty of World War One, and it ended the state of war between Germany and most of the Allied powers. And so I think that this is a great example of people kind of coming together to try to negotiate peace. Of course, again, we did have World War II not that long afterwards, but this was an attempt to create peace. And so I could definitely see, since there is a lot of chaotic moments happening in real life at this time, I could see more people just being like, you know what, we need to kind of focus on establishing like authentic harmony and balance. And also, it kind of makes me think about like the Black Lives Matter protest or just protest in general, instead of, or actually similar to the writer's strike that happened a few years ago, where they were very consistent about stating what they wanted and what they needed, and they kept going back into the courtroom and stuff like that to negotiate what was fair for not just like the specific speakers or the individuals who were at the forefront, but everybody involved. Everybody deserved equal pay for the amount of work that they were doing. And I think that's very reminiscent of Venus in Libra energy. Like, everybody deserves to have a fair chance of being the best that they can possibly be, getting paid what they deserve. Venus does represent money, so that makes sense there as well. And so, one of my practical tips during this transit is that if you are going to share your creative work publicly, it could be art, design, whatever, try to protect it legally as much as possible. So, that could be trademarks, contracts, stuff like that. Like something as simple as like an email is a written agreement. Like, say for instance, if you're doing like a wholesale partnership with a coffee shop or something like that, like you're making mugs for them or something. An email is a written agreement. There's nothing that can really go against that. Some people are like, oh, we just can kind of talk about it in person. It's like, no, I need a written agreement to make sure that if I make you 10 mugs, you are going to give me the money for those 10 mugs. You know what I mean? Or even if you do like digital art and you share it on Instagram or TikTok or something like that, you can put like a little watermark or something. There's a lot that you can do. And you can also like really turn down the transparency. So it's like if someone does try to steal it, it's like, nah, I gotcha, because the watermark is right there. You can't say nothing. So we'll see what happens in the future, but I think that is my biggest tip for all of my creatives out there. Now, when it comes down to I don't know, but it would be an interesting thing to look into, is like how to protect your work from AI, because that's kind of the biggest thing right now, and especially when we get into the next transit in just a moment. But I don't know what that looks like, but it makes me think about in Denmark, they actually have where you're, like for example, your likeness, you can copyright your likeness, so that if AI were to use your face or something like that for whatever the intention is, you could sue that company. So that's kind of an example of, like, again, a contract that you have to pay attention to. Or if you are signing up for some sort of AI platform or whatever, try to look into the terms and conditions. Like for example, I saw that CapCut, they put in their terms and conditions that if you use their platform, they have legal rights over your content that you make utilizing CapCut. So that's something to pay attention to in the future. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know the workaround with that, but I wishing you all the best of luck, when it comes down to those types of situations. And again, Libra is typically wants like harmony and balance, but like when it comes down to your work, you need to protect your things, and you deserve to. So that's the beauty, harmony, and negotiation energy of Venus. And we also have another energy that is bringing in a massive shift, which is Pluto direct in Aquarius. And it's going to definitely bring the energy of transformation, power, rebirth, and it's finally moving direct in Aquarius. It's been in and out of Aquarius over the last 3 to 4 years. I want to say. I want to say it's like three. Since let me double check actually. Since 2023, yeah. So since 2023, it's been in and out of Aquarius, going retrograde direct. So And again, like I said, Pluto represents generational change, deep transformation, and it's very slow but powerful. In order for it to get through all 12 of the zodiac signs, it takes about 250 years, which is also shows the end of an empire when, Pluto moves through the signs and stuff like that. And so Aquarius is the future. It's technology, communities, collective innovation. And so now that it's direct in motion, it gives us a clearer glimpse of what's going to happen over the next 15 to 20 years. We in the past, we've had a little bit of glimpses of what that looks like. Like, for example, in 2024, in February 2024, Google launched Google Gemini, which is their like competitor to ChatGPT basically. It's just basically just a generative artificial intelligence chatbot and virtual assistant. So that was and they released it right when Pluto was in Aquarius. So just to kind of give you an example of what we might be experiencing, we also could see a lot more examples of AI chatbots, people utilizing AI, maybe more AI art. So we'll see what that looks like. So, like I said before, with Venus entering Libra, make sure you check those terms and conditions as much as you possibly can, just to make sure that you are not signing up to be a part of this app of whatever it is and it's taking all of your artwork and stuff like that, or is taking claim to all of your artwork, I should say. So, definitely expect a lot of radical changes, social reform, networks, and how we share power and resources. Like, as an example, I feel like there's a lot of things happening on a political level. So I feel like a lot more people are probably going to be coming together to figure out what we can do for our own communities that is separate from, the traditional, oh, we need to, rely on our president or something like that. I feel like we have to focus on that. Quick side note, definitely try to continue voting in your local elections. Presidential elections, I feel like it could, depending on how the powers that be want things to go, they're going to make sure that it does. But I feel like with local elections, you can have a lot more control about what happens in your own city. Like, for example, really quick, I used to live in the Midwest, and so they tried to move the baseball stadium downtown, and there's no room in this particular area, so it was annoying that they were even wanting to do that. But basically, they found out that the city was going to charge people a certain percentage, and it was going to come out of their taxes or be a part of their taxes over the next 40 years. So it's like, thank God there were people who knew how to read contractual agreements and that kind of stuff to inform the public about what was going on. And I think that was really beautiful how, people really supported their community in that way. So now, they were able to block it because they got people to vote for these things. And also, again, breaking down the information so that people understood what they were voting for. And I think that that's a great way to benefit your community. Like, I don't think that you need to be on the front lines of nothing. But if you can share, like, a resource that you can share is simply information. And I think that's so beautiful and important. And now Kansas City does not have to pay for a stadium that should not have been moved in the first place. So, another big thing, or a potential that we might see, is digital revolutions, like I spoke about earlier. A lot of AI, we might see some new social media platforms, or a lot of changes to social media platforms. So, new tech is going to be reshaping how we live and earn. I think that, AI and stuff like that can definitely benefit helping people with like mundane tasks, which is great, aside from people making weird ass TikTok videos. But there's that. But also Pluto brings power struggles within communities and movements and tech spaces. So be very mindful of those extremes. Pluto does operate in extremes. So again, it's definitely one of those moments where you kind of have to think logically about specific things, but also take into consideration about how different agreements or contracts or whatever might affect people as a whole. Because and that's the thing too, a lot of people, I think this recent presidential election is a great example of how a lot of people have been othered, Or it's like, oh, this doesn't bother me because I'm not in this situation, or oh, that's okay because I'm not a part of that group. And it's like, no, actually, these things include everyone, not just these other individuals. And so I think that if we kind of think more from that standpoint of like, if I were to vote for this thing, if I were to agree to this thing, how would this impact me and my family? And take it from, I think that's the best course of action in the future. Just thinking a little bit more logically and a bit more big picture about, specific things that might happen in the future. And so, again, on a collective level, it's like balancing individuality with group progress. How will this thing affect me? How is it going to affect a group? And keep it pushing. And that's really it. So, another historical tie in is the American Revolution. We also have World War One. Similar to what I spoke about earlier with the Treaty of Versailles. And so both periods were very instrumental with radical social and technological changes in rebellion. Aquarius does represent rebellion, so we might see a lot of those type of moments like that. And so some current reflections is, climate change, redistribution of resources like food sharing services, reusing craft materials. Like if you're wanting to get into a hobby, there's a lot of places where people drop off like, some extra paint that they never used or some canvases that they never got around to using. And if you want to, again, if you want to start a new hobby, especially with this Venus in Libra, it would be the perfect time to do something super creative. And you can do it on a budget, which is even better. And again, looking more into sustainable living. And so that's a conversation for another day because there's a lot of things that can kind of contribute to what that might look like. And it doesn't have to be anything super crazy like you living out in the woods and eating acorns and shit. But, there's a lot of things that can contribute to that, like not buying a lot of products that has a ton of plastic or something like that. You know what I mean? But again, conversation for another time. So, October 13th is really about balance and rebirth. And so Venus in Libra invites us to create and connect and find beauty and harmony. Pluto in Aquarius pushes us to transform the bigger picture of our communities, our tech, and our future. And so my advice is to lean into your creativity, protect your work, especially, and think about how you can contribute to lasting collective change. And remember, that balance does not mean losing yourself, and revolution doesn't mean chaos. It means building something that is genuinely sustainable for everyone involved. And if this resonates with you, let me know in the comments how you're planning to use this Venus and Pluto energy. Like if you want to start a new creative hobby or something like that, or if you've been thinking about creating your own app, that would be really cool to learn. And of course, if you want a personal reading, to see how these transits land in your chart, definitely book a reading with me. The link is going to be down below. So, I love you. You are loved. You deserve love. And until next time, bye.